If I had to start from zero clients, zero sales, and I wanted to completely transform my business and I want to use LinkedIn in 2026, here's exactly what I would do. So let's assume that I have no connections, I'm not putting in any content, I don't have any clients. These are the only thing that matters when it comes to closing deals off of LinkedIn, and that's what we're going to break into today. One of the things I think people get wrong on LinkedIn is confusing busy work with actual production. That there's actually a list of very set actions that lead to deals on LinkedIn. And sometimes in the moment, they don't feel like we're going anywhere. But if you've felt stuck, it could be because you are not actually going after a very small set of the market. So, yes, our content wants to speak to the majority of the other 97%. But what a lot of people don't realize that there's really only 3% of your market at any given time who are actively looking and ready to make a purchase with your product or your service. So you do have to ensure that we have certain activities that are optimizing for that 3% and that you have other systems in place that can help further nurture the other 97%. So yes, you will get the lucky deal here and there, but if you do not have actions that are properly nurturing for what happens to take somebody who's never heard of you before and wasn't quite yet in a buying pocket, you need to nurture them all the way through so that when that person is actually ready, that you're the first person that they think of. So you really have to start thinking of like LinkedIn, the marathon. And so I think this is a really important analogy that I use with a lot of my clients because I've now worked with over 500 businesses on using LinkedIn as a form of lead generation for their business. And one of the biggest misconceptions that I see is that they will take 2 weeks of action, 3 weeks of action, sometimes even up to 2 months of action. And then they come back to me and they say, oh, LinkedIn doesn't work. It's not working. I'll go in and I'll review the volume of messages that they've been sending, the amount of follow-up they've been doing, the content they've been putting out, if they've used any sort of commenting strategy. And what I will say is just never enough actions of what you think that it needs to be. My favorite analogies is that of a person who goes to the gym. And if you've ever done any sort of training inside of a gym, and the goal has been to put on muscle and resculpt your body, we all know that that does not happen overnight. It doesn't happen over a couple of weeks. It doesn't even happen over a couple of months. That it actually takes a good 3 to 4 months before other people are going to start noticing the changes that you've made in your body. And you haven't taken off any bit of significant time. We will have rest days, 2 to 3 rest days per week. But ideally, you're in that gym grinding at least 5 days a week to make significant change. And so I don't know why in the business world people feel that that would be any different, nor should it be. Getting leads in the door when all you've done up to date is either no business or based off of referrals, and you want to take somebody who's completely cold, who's never heard of you before, convince them to hand over their information, convince them to show up to a sales call with you, and convince them to buy from you is a lot set up in terms of skill and presence. And you building that out is literally the holy grail of business. Everybody wants a business that can generate pipeline, that at any time, if I pull this lever, it's going to spit out a deal for me. But too many times I see business owners out there just not willing to put in the work or not really even realizing just what it takes and the level of consistency that it requires when you do not have a giant team to do this for you and you are left on your own. You have to do it. But then a lot of times what I see from business owners is they say things like, well, I don't have time to do this. I have clients to attend to. I have operations to attend to. Insert all of the excuses here. When really what I see happening is that you have not put in enough time yet to really see what the payoff is. And the payoff that we're trying to build is a predictable way in which to pull in clients. It is sales. And at the end of the day, for a business, there is no greater exercise to take other than sales revenue generating activities. Because if the clients that you're trying to serve today leave, let's be frank, there is no business out there that has zero churn in their business. Everybody has some level of churn. The problem is that when 1, 2, 3, or the biggest client that you had steps out, and now all of a sudden your revenue drops, you have employees to pay for, you have expenses to pay for, but you don't have anything in place in order to pick up new clients tomorrow, that is one of the biggest red flags that I can see inside of a business. It does not allow us to be in any sort of position to be acquired or get new investments or even we have enough cash in the bank to be able to hire the next people that we need to. So having systems inside of the business should be the number one top priority within your business. But if you've ever tried to approach this where I'm just going to go to the gym, I'm going to pick up a lift weight one time, and then I'm going to walk out and I'm going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, your idea of what it's going to take is completely skewed. So you really have to look at this as a way to have clear consistency, and you need to have a very strategic way in which you're going to do it. And one of the antidotes that I have for you is if you just look at this as a set list of checklist, then you would just get a lot more wins. Because what happens on sales, everyone thinks that sales is, yes, there are tactics and there are ways to have buyer psychology and sales psychology and dealing with objections. Yes, that stuff matters, but not as much as you think it does. You know what matters the most? Checking off a list of things to do, doing the right amount of follow-up. That is really where we see the most amount of wins. So instead of treating it like the guy who just shows up on LinkedIn, I'm going to grab what I want, I'm going to take what I want, and I'm going to feed myself a terrible diet of, junk food because that's what feels good in the moment, and then I'm going to move on. Totally butchering this analogy, but my point here was that you cannot look at it like you are going to be anything at short term. You have to treat this like an athlete would. You have to consistently put your right stuff into the body. You have to treat it like a marathon. This is not going to be an overnight success story for you. I hate to break it to you. But if you're going to be using LinkedIn, which is one of the most economical, cheapest ways to generate pipeline that does not require you to spend thousands and thousands of dollars a month on ads, doesn't require you to do cold email and spin up all these different inboxes, and doesn't require you to sit on a phone all day and make cold calls to people. It's literally the best tool out there for businesses, but yet we try to crack it in a way that is just going for the cheap, saturated foods. All right, so earlier I talked about if you just had a specific checklist of the daily actions you need to take, then you would probably have a lot more wins. And so that's what I really do with a lot of my clients is I recommend that you take anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes a day and you just check these things off. So the first place that we always start is by creating content. I know that sounds boring. How would that get me clients? But what a lot of people don't realize is that when you are doing any sort of outbound, people are going to come back and they're going to look at your profile. They're first going to go through things like your headline, your about us section, your banner, and then they're going to scroll down and start checking out the content that you're putting out. Another big thing too is that once you have engaged into a new connection with somebody, the platform is naturally going to be pushing your content out to them in their feed. So it's a great way to stay top of mind with somebody. And I have some other videos here that you can check out on my channel that we talk about what types of content actually create sales. It's not just value-based. We create content based on insight, but that's another video that you can go ahead and check out. Once we've created a piece of content, then we will use an amplify strategy, and that's just very strategic commenting. And really that takes like 5-10 minutes a day where we're engaging on certain target accounts where our future clients are hanging out on. So that again, we can continue to show up in their newsfeed and we can get more eyeballs on our thought leadership pieces that we're putting out. And then you have the 30 to 40 minute section where we're just doing specific accounts that we're building towards. So if they're putting out content, they're engaging in comments, you go back and do the same thing so you can constantly get your hand raised back out in front of people. A lot of people don't realize that it actually takes a lot of touch points to get somebody going from totally cold to trusting you enough just to say yes to taking a sales call with you. And that is what some of these actions are doing, is that subconsciously we're constantly planting more and more seeds with our ideal clients, and our names are showing up, so that to the point where we build so much trust that we're building a bridge in the same way that a referral lead comes in, where they start to understand what is the outcomes that we can drive for them, what are the solutions that we can provide, so that when we do go in and we ask for the sales call with that prospect, there's a lot more familiarity there because they've been seeing our name popping up in the newsfeed. And then, of course, we have the response. So we go back and we go through all of our warm conversations. Anybody who requires our attention to move them through to get into a booked call. And then, of course, we follow the sprint. So we do a follow-up. So anybody that we've had past sales calls with, anybody who said that they wanted to take a call with us, they just haven't booked yet, there is a whole pipeline that we are working through here. But that is a very focused 60 minutes. I will literally just set a timer and I will go through each of these actions and I will just check them off each day. Because I don't think about it. If I start thinking about it, about what should I do, well, what should I say, that's where the brain takes over and starts saying things to us like, what are you doing? This person doesn't want to hear from you. These efforts don't work. This is a waste of our time. You cannot let those thoughts win. We have funny names for that little voice in your head in our house, but I always think of it as the judge. And that judge inside of us is not built to let us win. That judge is to let us keep dopamine high, to make us feel good, to make us safe, and to not push us outside of our box. So you have to really become very monotonous about this process and just move through a very designated checklist in that order that I showed you. So we really have to also understand for this process is that we'll talk about a lot of this, which is called the gravity game. And it's how do we go from having this really, really low status within our sales process to at least meeting our prospects with an even keel. And so understanding that some of the best closers win before they ever even send a DM. The DM is just a formal beginning of a conversation. So again, if you're using LinkedIn, all you're doing is sending outbound. It's very easy to come in and have to be in that lower status and make your way back up and use all these different tactics versus you can just skip the whole process of having to be this like incredibly good person having these conversations inside of the DMs on LinkedIn and just use some of the methods that I showed you. And then again, that trust factor just completely slowly builds up over time when they see your name coming up in again, in again, in again. And that's because it happens over time and you're showing up consistently and you're using that daily workout that I just went over with you here. So instead of like frantically worrying about what it is that you need to be doing, I do have a system called the 60-minute workout. Some of my clients do it for a full hour. Some of my clients just make sure they do it for at least 10 minutes a day, but I go through a very specific workshop on exactly what happens in each of those time blocks, what you should be doing, what are the strategies behind it, how do you write those posts, how do you create the follow-up, etc. I cover everything that you would need to know to be able to run the 60-minute daily process, because for every time we run this process on my profile and the profiles that we have with the companies or the profiles that we do this for our other clients, we easily book 2 to 3 calls per day per profile. So if that's the kind of results that you're looking for and you're finally ready to make LinkedIn turn out clients for you, you can grab a link down below in the description. It's just a one-time payment of $7. You get to keep it forever. Now, if you're still with me in this video, I want you to make sure that you give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit subscribe. I put out new videos like this every single week to show you guys exactly what is working for us when it comes to booking sales calls using platforms like LinkedIn and Meta for a B2B sales process. Cheers.